I've been an addict since I was 13, when I first picked up my hard substance. For a long time, I didn't want to believe that because that was just normal in the environment that I grew up in. But, you know, in all reality, that was the turning point in my life where I really became an addict.
My mother had sold 3 homes to financially pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. She had nothing left to give, so she simply went to God with one prayer. And that prayer consisted of, God, please cure him, kill him, or kill me. I can't take it anymore.
It starts out pretty innocent, and it starts out maybe as fun. It may start out as very innocent, like it did in my life, but what I didn't realize what it was doing underneath and what it was masking in my life.
A lot of people do it just to have a good time, or just because they're, you know, they're not happy with the way that their life is going. Well, your life is not gonna get any better if you come and you start buying drugs off of me. You know, I'm not here to make your life better. I'm here just to make money.
He played quarterback, he was running back, if he could have thrown the ball to himself and then blocked everybody from getting him, he would have done it.
Our son had a heart of gold. He would give his last dollar to someone on the street that he thought needed help.
This is something that it never leaves you. We're now into the 4th year, and we miss her more and more. It just doesn't go away. She was a lovely girl and fun, and she always very kind also.
Some days I'm angry, some days I still go through guilt, but there's a longing, there is a hole that even on the most beautiful day, I still think of her and I still miss her and I still would rather her be here.
Unless you live it, do you understand it?
I'm Brandon Novak, and this is Doo-Doo Falls.
I wasn't the kid that walked in class 20 minutes late in fear that everyone was staring at me. I was the kid that walked in class 20 minutes late thinking that everyone was waiting for me. Therefore, when I had my first drinking and drugging experience, it wasn't like I had it, I found it, I drank it, I sniffed it, I ate it, and I had arrived, right? Because the reality is, what I've learned now is that skateboarding did for me at a young age what drugs and alcohol did for me at a later age, right? You give me a skateboard, you put me in a room with the prettiest women in the world, I felt like I belonged, I felt like you were waiting for me. Later on down the line, the drugs produced the same feeling. I got my first skateboard at the age of 7. And that night when my mother put me to bed, she said, Brandon, what do you want me to do with the skateboard? And I said, I want it in bed with me. She said, why? I said, because if I die, I want it to come with me. It was like God had came down and handed me the Holy Grail in the form of a skateboard. As soon as I touched that skateboard, I knew I was gonna be a professional skateboarder. I was born and raised in Baltimore City. My father died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. I lived with that after-school special, the person I was not gonna be, which was my father. I disliked my father and I hated drugs and alcohol even more because I saw what it made him do to me, to my mother, to my brother, to my sister. So I actually excelled at everything I did because I was not gonna become that man. But I found myself on one of my first skateboarding tours, and I was with a fellow by the name of Mike Vallely. And Mike Vallely caught me with drugs and alcohol. And he said, Brandon, get rid of the drugs or get off the tour. I threw the drugs down the sewer. We finished the demo. Back at the hotel, I get a girl to drive me back to where the demo was. I go to the sewer where I flushed my drugs down and I fish them out. Long story short, I get caught with the drugs and I get kicked off the tour. And you'll hear in my short story here that anything between me and that next bag, bottle, or pill must and will go and is not personal, it's just business. for the game that I play called addiction. So now I'm home and I get a phone call from my mentor, a fellow by the name of Tony Hawk. And Tony says, Brandon, we have one or two options we could do with you. We could put you into treatment, you can save your life, you can continue to be a professional skateboarder, or you can quit the team. Mind you, I got my first skateboard at the age of 7. I'm now 15. I'm touring the world with Tony Hawk. I have a private tutor that goes with. First skateboarder to be endorsed by Gatorade. I'm designing my pro model for Pal Peralta. I lived it, I ate it, I slept it, I dreamt it from 7 to 15. Now I'm presented this opportunity, either go to treatment, continue to be a professional skateboarder, save your life, or quit the team. I have to quit. It's not personal, it's just business for the game that I play called addiction.
Addiction is defined as a brain disease. So we have to think of it as a chronic medical illness, relapsing and remitting just like any other medical illness.
People don't believe that it's a disease. In reality, it's a brain disease. It can affect anyone at any time. And so people need treatment. It's not, and no one wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be addicted today. I'm going to lose my family. I'm going to lose my friends. I am going to lose the job, the career, anything and everything I've ever done. It doesn't happen that way.
The stigma of addiction is still very real. Unfortunately, the public still looks at drug addiction as something that is evil, as opposed to a disease. And the need for education is more important than ever, especially with the rise of opioid use and opioid overdoses.
The disease of addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what side of the tracks you grew up on. It doesn't care if you're at the bottom of the hill or the top of the hill. Could care less if you're male or female. It could care less what culture you are. It doesn't discriminate.
I would be released by the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, it's a tough combination to be an NFL football player and someone who's stuck in active addiction. So after that, I would bounce around through different jobs and try to, balance normal life with addiction and try to make them coincide, which is impossible. And eventually, my life would become extremely unmanageable. And went to Kent State University on a full ride scholarship. And really made a name for myself through my first 3 years. All-conference player, led the country in interceptions, led the conference in tackles. And going into my senior season, a knee injury, the third game of the season would start a snowball effect of a few choices that I made, toppled with emotional trauma in my life with anxiety of the NFL now, with a torn MCL, with depression of the timing of the injury, and with stress that I really never experienced before. So I would, start taking prescription medication, opioids, and that snowball effect for me was by my senior night in college, I was high on heroin for the first time.
This can happen to any one of us. It starts with an injury, a fall, we go to the doctor, and they were putting us on pain management.
And you get prescribed medication, right? And it's opiates, and it's all these different things, painkillers, Percocets, whatever. And now all of a sudden you're addicted to it. So the people that normally would have never even considered doing heroin now are doing that because they shift from the painkiller, and now they don't have access to it anymore because the doctor cuts them off. So they end up shifting to heroin. Now the problem with the heroin is it's usually cut with fentanyl or carfentanil. Fentanyl, this stuff is so dangerous that a few little grains of it could kill you.
Today, kids are going through the medicine cares of their parents. You have Xanax, you still have oxycodones. Today's kids really skip over the marijuana, the pot. They go right for the heroin. And a lot of these kids are dropping dead today. A lot of these drugs are laced with fentanyl. A lot of the kids, I think it's at a record high, that are going to their graves.
2015, the heroin deaths really took off. All the fentanyl overdose deaths that I'd seen up until that time had been with abuse of fentanyl patches. That's how it was mostly prescribed. You put a patch on, it would give you slow medication release over time. It made it a good option for cancer patients who had need for long-term pain control. We started to see fentanyl that was not being used as part of a prescription patch abuse, but was being synthesized in laboratories clandestinely and was being used, sold as a drug on the street, just like heroin. Fentanyl being much more potent was much greater concern, because when a drug's more potent, the likelihood that you could overdose on it and it could cause death becomes higher.
Well, fentanyl is an opioid. So it's a synthetic opioid, and it's probably 100 times more lethal than heroin. It's largely manufactured in China. You need a very small amount. And then there's something called carfentanil that's also is a synthetic that's even more lethal. And that's what's out on the street, and that's what's killing people.
When you have people that are so addicted, they can't get the proper medication in the form of oxycodone and other medications, they have no choice but to hit the streets. And then the people, those profiteers, the ones that only care about making money, have no regard for human life, well, all they want to do is they sell death.
My name is Peter. I make my living as a drug dealer. Most days I spend them either cooking crack cocaine or mixing fentanyl with heroin. Most everything gets some sort of mixture in it, because when you buy it, I have to make some money. So I have to make it a little bit bigger than what it is. Most of my customers, my really good customers, they pay extra to make sure that they get, that they don't get any cut, is what we call it, with the product. They want to get more of a pure. Most of my customers are regular people. Some of them you probably know. They could be your brother, your sister. A lot of them, they have regular jobs. You would never think that they're using drugs, but that's how I like my customers. That way they don't attract too much attention.
The worst part about my job is having to look at another parent and tell them that something happened to their child.
Floating in the blue sky, flying away.
Another Sunday without your laugh, your jokes, your dancing. I miss you with a broken heart. I mean, he got a really bad hit on his shoulder. So, it was bothering him. He was holding his girlfriend's hand one day and his arm goes out of socket. So his first surgery was at 15. And from the moment it happened, and he got his first hydrocodone, which is an opiate, and he was euphoric. And I remember saying to Mark, I don't understand. It makes me sick to my stomach. It makes me sleep. I hate the feeling. But Kyle began, this is what I want to do with my life. I feel so good right now. So what does an addict do, an emerging addict? If he knew it was going to run out in 4 hours, at 3 hours, he's already badgering me. Pain, pain, pain. And these are painful surgeries. It was the pharmacist at CVS on Key Biscayne that first said, something's wrong here. He's asking for this too much. And I said, but he's in pain. What else can we do? And he said, Advil. And I'm like, oh, that's not going to help, So I was naive. I'm not going to say I was stupid. I was naive. And so that was my first clue. Somebody noticed.
What you really have to take into account is that, we're human beings, and we want to heal, and we want to find calm and rest from whatever it is that's going on in our brain. We're going to go out and we're going to get it.
Those red shoes, when Kyle had a pair of shoes under the bench, it meant he was home and in bed, or just home. So those are the last shoes that he put. The Sunday before we lost Kyle, he was pacing. He was really anxious. And he said, I'm going to go for a walk on the beach. And we always knew that meant trouble. So he comes home. I see he's been drinking, and our policy was always, Kyle, you can live here as long as you want help. But if it gets really bad, you're going to rehab or you're going out the door. So he went out. He wouldn't do the drug test. And Mark, my husband, who is the most wonderful, amazing man, he said, son, don't go out. We'll start over again tomorrow. Go to bed now. But Kyle was already so agitated, he wasn't having it. So we were all nervous. And we would call the cops if he was drinking and driving. He was in the parking lot in his brand new Camaro, sound asleep.
Addiction is an awful, awful disease. It works its way into our minds and our bodies and rewires us and causes people to do things that a normal person wouldn't think of.
Kyle just wanted a bump of cocaine before work. He bought what he thought was cocaine, and he crossed the street, and this is probably about 6:50 in the morning, and he snorted. He must have taken just a step on the sidewalk and went down.
That's not supposed to happen. Something that really struck me is we were speaking for the Tina Daly Foundation to a school, and after I was done, I introduced Cindy Dodds. And Cindy came up, and one of the first things out of her mouth was that she talking about me. She said, he talked about a 23-year-old that had CPR in progress. She says, that was me doing CPR on my son. And that's not supposed to happen.
So Florida in 2011 had an opioid crisis that was driven by prescription drugs. The legislature, well-intentioned, closed the pill mills, which were the doctor's office / pharmacies that you could see in strip malls across especially across South Florida. That was when the supply of prescription opioids was greatly restricted. So the supply was restricted, but the demand was still there because people were already addicted to opioids. As soon as the supply was limited, the cartels flooded our streets with cheap heroin, and thus began the current opioid epidemic.
We're gonna take a drive through Overtown now. We're probably gonna go down one of the main avenues. Usually there's people that are staying under the overpasses, because it protects them from the elements. This is a program in the state of Florida, the only legal exchange program in the state of Florida at this point in time. We have participants that come through that door. They come in with the needles that are used, because it's a one-for-one exchange, and they drop them into our sharps container.
When was the last time you were tested for HIV?
About a year ago.
Okay. How many drop off? One, how many do you need? Part of what I do is I link people to treatment whenever needed. So what we're doing today is going out and making sure that our participants are staying in care, that they're able to exchange needles with us, and primarily to just let them know that we're here for them, and we're building rapport every single day and engaging these individuals so that they eventually come to an understanding that they might want to change their certain behaviors and go into treatment. If they don't want to do that, that's okay with us too. We're here to help them stay safe out here.
We give them needles. We have all the needles that they need here, all the sizes. And most importantly, we give them Narcan. This is our most important gift to this community.
We hand out these Narcan devices at the needle exchange. So everybody gets a box of 2. And since we've been doing that, we have over 900 reported overdose reversals, which is, I went into this for HIV prevention and Hep C prevention, but this is the most successful part of our program. This would save any of the young people that we've lost way too soon. So it's very easy. You just stick it in the nose and just like that, you save somebody's life. It's amazing. This should be everywhere. Everybody should have this. Just like Tylenol, this should be everywhere.
So what we do here is we try to lift people up. And that really is the mission of ID Exchange, one of the missions, but our main mission here is to reduce infectious disease in the community, provide social justice for all that need our services, and change the minds of folks who might think that we're doing things like perpetuating the problem of substance use. We are not. We're here to try to help with that issue. And those are the important things that I want people to understand about our program, that we're here to help and we'll do whatever it takes for these people.
Welcome to my reality. The edge of insanity is where I walk the line, time after time. I'll be waiting for you.
Christopher growing up was the happiest kid I have ever seen. He had a smile on his face all the time. He was loving, he was caring. Everything he did to the fullest extent.
My brother and I had a very special bond. We were both adopted, separate families. He came into my life when I was 5. I always wanted a brother, not really a sister as much, just a brother. And I got one. I felt very blessed. We were best friends. You know, we shared, the typical brother-sister bond, but then some, just because of our own personal connection due to our special circumstance.
He was the kind of kid that you did something for him. You bought him a toy. You did something for him, took him to ice cream after school or whatever. And an hour later, he would come over to me, give me a hug and say, "Mommy, thank you for doing that."
When he turned 12, I believe it was, he started, experimenting with pot, smoking cigarettes, drinking here and there.
He didn't want to go anywhere. He was just not being himself, and we noticed that.
You're taking a substance potentially or doing anything that has an impact on your life. So you can't hold appointments, you can't show up to work on time.
Some of the signs when your kids get involved in drugs is, their grades are dropping, losing weight, mood swings, their friends changed, dropping out of school. You know your child. You know when your child is not behaving the right way.
To be perfectly honest, this isn't a comfortable topic. We don't like to sit down with our family members, especially our teens, and say, "So are you experimenting with drugs?" It's the same concept with the sex conversation. It's not something that's really comfortable. It's not something that, as parents, you're coached to do. It's just kind of a given of, yep, you're supposed to have this conversation, find out what's going on with your kids, be a good parent, and move on. So as a teen, I'm just going to tell my parents what I know they want to hear, which is, no, of course, everything's good. And parents are relieved to hear that.
Pay attention. Pay attention to your kids, because you never know what they're really doing. The idea of a kid nodding off when they're not supposed to. So at the dinner table, all of a sudden they, almost as if they fall asleep and wake up. That's not normal, or it's a sign. Are they really tired? Do they have a reason to be tired? They would find belts in the bathroom. They would find alcohol and cotton swabs and Q-tips in different places. And these were little tiny clues that probably just seemed to be normal for a teenager. And parents would go on with their lives. And unfortunately, things often happen right underneath our noses.
It wasn't until he was about 15 that we also found a little plastic bag with white powder in it. I acted just like a normal parent would, denial. You find these things and you think, it cannot be, this cannot be, this is not my kid. There was no longer, you know, you can't do this, so you can't do that, or you can't go to this event or something. It was something we didn't know how to deal with.
Pretty much every year, he's been in either some kind of rehab program, halfway house, or living facility type of situation. We kept looking for places where he could go, and we would send him. And every rehab place that he went, he did beautifully in. He loved the people, they loved him, but he could not do it on his own. My brother, unfortunately, did not receive his diagnosis with his mental illness till much later, after the addiction kind of took hold of him. I think that was an unfortunate turn of events, because he clearly had a chemical imbalance and was very predisposed to something that nobody really knew how to treat or help.
When he was 23 years old, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So, unbeknownst to us, our son was dealing with ADD and bipolar disorder.
We have about, I would say, well over 95% of our client base also suffers from a mental health disorder.
There's so many sober houses, there's so many recovery facilities out there. There's not a lot of mental health facilities. It's one extreme or the other. If someone's suicidal or attempts suicide or dealing with mental health disorders, they're gonna Baker Act them. They're gonna put them into a hospital. They're usually there for 3 or 4 days. They'll be assessed after 3 days, and in 72 hours, and usually they're let out.
My son died May 1st. He was an addict. He was bipolar. He had ADD. He was an alcoholic. And he struggled, and he really wanted to recuperate. He wanted to be in recovery. He just could not do it. The toxicology report did not find any trace of alcohol. They didn't find any trace of cannabis. They did not find any cocaine or heroin. He bought something. I don't know what he intended to buy, but what he got was 100% fentanyl.
When a death occurs that doesn't appear to be an all-natural death, that should trigger a call to my office. And that call usually comes from either a law enforcement officer who's investigating a death at a home scene, or a business, or maybe even out in a public place. And we then gather information and make that decision that, yes, this is a medical examiner death. When we make that decision, we then have the body brought here to our facility. They bring the bodies in from wherever they're coming from, a hospital or a home or some such place, and they'll put the body on the scale here to weigh it, and then they have access to the cooler from the other side here. The autopsy itself doesn't take that long. It depends on the nature of the findings and everything, but with an average overdose death, it may be a couple of hours. The hard part is in putting all the information together and waiting for the toxicology results. The testing takes at least a minimum of a few weeks, but more commonly in overdose deaths requires 3, 4, 5 months, sometimes even longer. And we have to wait for those results until we know that it's clearly an overdose death.
Regrettably, communities, neighborhoods, families throughout this country have learned that we are experiencing, and have experienced over the last couple of years, a true opioid epidemic. It is killing our children, our families, our friends, our brothers, our sisters at epidemic proportions.
People that don't grow up learning to trust don't reach out, because trust is something that's learned.
We have a special drug court in Miami-Dade County. In fact, it was the first one in the United States. It started somewhere around 25, 26 years ago. And it was for traditional cocaine abuse and other addictions to different kinds of drugs. Well, now we're starting to bring into our drug court opioid users so that they can be funneled and directed to medication, treatment services, and other services that they might need.
How you doing? I'm doing great. You are, tell me.
This is a disease and it needs to be treated, and oftentimes it needs to be treated with medication, and that you need to learn the tools to maintain your sobriety.
The idea is to have a safety net and wraparound services. So when the police find them, we can get them into drug court, get them on the right track, and get them into services.
There's been an increased awareness about the nature of the problem, the disease aspect of it. And the police now, especially City of Miami, are not arresting as much. They're trying to get people into treatment. They're trying to take them to the emergency room and then get them into treatment.
I think the system has largely failed drug addicts. I think that incarceration is absolutely not the answer to treating addiction. Addiction is a disease, and unfortunately, there are too many people who have committed drug-related crimes that are currently incarcerated. Incarcerating someone for a long period of time based on a crime that they committed under the influence is not the answer. The underlying issue needs to be addressed.
Everything about the prisons is about security for the most part. There's very little rehabilitation there. So it's about securing everything, making sure nobody gets out, making sure there's no fights, no problems. So if you have a mental health disorder, say anxiety, or say bipolar, or something to that effect, it's going to be very difficult for them to comply with what they need to comply with.
So this letter was written by Michael, and you're gonna have to pardon my language, but this is what he wrote and this is how he felt. He goes, drugs fucking suck. Drugs were put on this earth to separate weak from strong and smart from dumb. Drugs are fun and games until you're facing criminal charges, till you're addicted. Brief happiness, then looking for money and stealing so you can buy more and get high again. You forget what real happiness is. Then it becomes the only thing that makes you happy. Michael had an amazing smile. People loved his smile, and his laugh was contagious. But slowly and surely, I started to notice that there were other things happening. You know, Michael on a couple occasions had nodded off in front of me, and that scared me. I'd never seen something like that. I didn't know what it was. Michael couldn't deal with a lot of the stresses in life. It was really difficult for him to do so. My son's girlfriend, at one point, she says he's doing heroin. And that scared me. That scared me a lot. And that's when I thought, okay, you know, it's time to get him into some type of rehab center. You know, he needs to get help because I wasn't gonna be able to do that for him. And Michael wanted help. I know Michael wanted help. Michael came to me, he told me Michael wanted help. He was tired of this life and he wanted to make a change.
No one grows up saying that they want this kind of life. No one is a child and says, I want to live on the street and I want to destroy my family and I want to, you know, whatever the case is. No one chooses this when they're a child.
Michael finished a 3-week residential program. I did bring him back home rather than send him to halfway. I didn't know that that was an option. And I also didn't know that, you know, relapse is very typical when you're in recovery. Now here's another, you know, note to self of what you don't know, right? Or to make sure that you ask a lot of questions because you're not provided a lot of information. We didn't know what we were dealing with.
We try to educate the parents a lot because the parents don't know anything about this disease. You know, the first time, you know, their son or daughters get hooked up in drugs, they go into panic, they go into fear mode. And just like myself, you don't know where to look because there's no help out there. You know, treatment centers just waiting to take your money, but they're not out to educate you.
He went into a halfway the second time around, and he stayed there as long as he could. He had found out he was going to be a father, and he felt that he needed to sustain his family, so he wanted to find employment to do just that, and he moved away. However, like I said, relapses is part of recovery, and he did relapse. Michael was only on his path for about 2 months before he passed.
My name is Kenny Fundus. I'm from Long Island, New York. I have just about 100 days clean right now. And, coming here has been a blessing for me. I'm grateful every day to wake up, come here and sit with other people that are just like me, who I thought I was alone in this struggle.
My name is Emily. I'm 26, and I'm at the Edge Recovery. When I was 14, I started drinking, and then it slowly progressed into experimenting with marijuana, and then ecstasy, and then cocaine, and then I was introduced to heroin from my ex-boyfriend.
Whether it be alcohol, weed, cocaine, heroin, pills, they're all relatively the same. They all bring you to a different level.
It's Wednesday night, it's 10:30 p.m. They put me in this cafeteria. This cafeteria is completely empty. There's these big interrogation-style lights shining in my face. And out of nowhere, this older black gentleman walks up to me. He says, "White boy, what are you doing here?" I say, "Heroin." He said, "How old are you?" I said, 17. He said, "Do yourself a favor and don't turn 18 in a place like this." As quick as he came, he left. I leave that treatment center, disease untreated, no defense against me and that first drink or drug. And he was right. I didn't turn 18 in a place like that, but I turned 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 31, 32, 34, 35 in a jail or a treatment center.
That first step you got to take before you find that serenity and that peace is admitting you have a problem. And that was the hardest thing for me to do in my life. Everyone wants to be a functioning addict, but in reality, that's never going to happen.
I lost my apartment, I lost jobs, I lost my car. I have everything that I own with me now at the Edge. I had lost my little brother to a heroin overdose last year.
So they feel completely alone and completely isolated from the world. And what's so important, it's imperative that with groups and the programming like this, that people could realize they're not alone. People do care about them. And other people are dealing with the same thing. You have to go through the pain to heal from this.
We know that people who have a strong genetic background, parents who have substance use disorders, addiction issues, grandparents, so people who have a long family history of addiction do also tend to have more high risk for addiction.
People feel that drug addicts want to be drug addicts, that it's their fault that they're in that situation. They originally started using a drug or drinking, but not everybody that drinks becomes an alcoholic.
Today, we're still behind. It's still something that we don't have many answers to, and the treatments are not good enough.
And he talked specifically about the monster in his head. He goes, "Mom, you don't understand. It's not a problem. It's a monster that lives in my head." And he says, "Mom, it's a smell. It's a memory." He says, "Even in the morning, before my feet are on the ground and my eyes are open and I'm fully awake, the monster's already seek, seek, seek."
So in between all those years, I'm checking in and out of treatment centers. And what I would do is I would loiter with the intent to recover, right? I would get a sponsor. I would get a home group. I fellowship really easy because I'm a people person. But then they would say, work those steps. And it's like, whoa, fucking relax, man.
I've been in jail numerous times. And no jail, no judge. Nobody was telling me what to do. Nobody. I had to hit my rock bottom myself, It's when you want the help will be there. If you don't want the help, it won't be there. Everybody needs help, and not everybody wants the help. And it's true, a lot of people, they need that help. Very few want it. But the ones that want it are the ones that make it through. You have to want this program. It's not gonna happen by itself.
The reason why I did so bad for so many years in so many treatment centers, so many doctor's offices, so many psychiatrists' offices, so many 12-step meetings is because it was not my idea. Remember, I'm an addict. I'm defiant by nature. I do not do well with authority, and I will not conform unless it becomes my idea.
Every time I reached out for help and I failed at it, it was like I lost a piece of myself every time. So as times got closer to where I am today, it was like I was just an empty shell of myself.
The potency of what we're seeing out in the streets has never been seen before. And we already know that these drugs are changing, brain chemistry. They're changing brain structures.
Patients who have been clean from substances 3 months to a year, and they've done, different chronicities. What they noticed is that if they show them, let's say, drug paraphernalia, they show them, the pipe, or they show them a drink, they can see those same pleasure centers light up and ready to enjoy that drug again, even if they've been a year clean. So the brain needs time to heal after it's been accustomed to having that substance for such a long time.
That includes alcohol. It includes, benzodiazepines. It includes cocaine, and all of these things we know cause changes in the brain.
This disease has a lot of yets. I've yet to smoke crack. I've yet to put a needle in my arm. And before you know it, those yets come true.
So I was okay with staying on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park selling my body. I was okay with my mother buying me a plot. I was okay with people taking life insurance policies out on me. But what do I do when I'm a 35-year-old heroin addict? I've put my mother out of her bedroom. I make her sleep on the sofa. I leave that bedroom once a day to go buy $180 worth of heroin and cocaine. So I do what I do best, and I go to an abandoned house, a shooting gallery, if you will, and I'm sitting in this shooting gallery and I'm doing what I do, and my phone goes off on social media. And it's this woman, she said, I read your book, it saved my life, and I could give a fuck less because I don't want mine. She said, what do you say about an all-exclusive paid trip to Fort Lauderdale? I said, that's great, I need some heroin, some cocaine, some Xanax, and some wine. She says, no problem. I'm supposed to be in Pennsylvania. I'm not supposed to leave the state of Pennsylvania. I'm supposed to be clean and sober. I'm supposed to report to my parole officer's office at 8:30 a.m., and I'm supposed to produce a clean urine. I'm in Baltimore City. I have a needle hanging out of my arm. I'm about to head to the airport to catch a red-eye flight to Fort Lauderdale. And if I piss into a cup, it'll light up like a Christmas tree.
It's not because the person is flawed and they have a character flaw, or they're weak, or they don't have willpower. It's the power of the brain, the conditioning of the brain structure, the brain chemistry.
We're so judgmental, right? We have no clue the pain they're feeling and they're going through. None. So people say, well, it was their choice. Well, maybe that first time was their choice. Maybe even the second time, but they never really choose it in the end. And if you know anything about addiction, if you've done your research, you'll see, addiction is a disease of the brain, and it takes away their capacity of making rational decisions, or the decisions that we think would be rational.
Before I go to BWI Airport to board this red-eye flight to make it to Fort Lauderdale, I gotta stop in the neighborhood and grab a few things from the boys, because God forbid I get sick on the plane. Now, I don't wear underwear at this point because my life is consumed by the getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. I'm not the kind of heroin addict that's gonna take these underwear off, wash them in a sink, find an imaginary dresser in an alley and pay it. That's not what I do. I get high by any and all means necessary. So when I go to grab the things from the boys, they see fit to rob me as opposed to serve me. And when they rob me, they rip my front and my back pockets completely out. Now my front and my back are completely exposed. That did not work out the way I had anticipated. I get to the airport, I get in line, I get up to the lady. She takes one look at me, she says, Mr. Novak, are you under the influence of anything? And I say, absolutely not. And she says, I believe you are. You will not fly for 72 hours. Not like the next flight or tomorrow morning, 3 days. The reality is anybody dressed the way I was dressed would not be allowed to walk outside, let alone board a flight anywhere. Something very imperative happened in that moment at BWI Airport that evening. God dressed up in the form of a TSA airport security agent and did for me what I could not do for myself. Because I did not want to get on that flight. I knew if I boarded that flight, it was going to end really bad. My heart was beating 1,000,000 miles an hour like I just shot 10 kilos of cocaine. I did not want to get on that flight, but I did not have the privilege to not get on that flight because my disease said, bitch, get on the flight. So I decided to call my sponsor, Lex, and I said, Lex, I'm stranded at BWI Airport and I want to kill myself. He said, what you're going to do is you're going to get on a train. You're going to come back to Philadelphia. You people, you nut jobs, from the very first treatment center when I walked in and I said I was not buying what you were selling, I'm not drinking your Kool-Aid, you fucking people are now willing to leave your cookouts, your family, your loved ones on Memorial Day 2015. You're gonna leave all those loved ones and you're gonna come pick an alcoholic such as myself up from the train station that's been deemed unhelpable or unfixable. He said, we're gonna pick you up. You're gonna stay with us tonight. We're gonna take you to see your parole officer. And God willing, she gives you one more chance. You're gonna go back to treatment. I successfully complete that 90-day treatment center. In that 90-day treatment center, what they taught me was that my mentality will create the reality for which I live in. And if you change your perception, you can change your world. And your defects can become your assets with a shift of perception.
People that are in treatment have been numbing themselves. They have been avoiding feeling what they have been feeling for a year, 10 years, 40 years. So the minute that you go into treatment, guess what? Now you're feeling, you now have a team of people around you trying to get to the core reason as to why you started numbing yourself in the first place.
This disease doesn't discriminate. It can easily happen to you, your loved ones, your family, your friends, your people around you. You know, what happened to me is a common occurrence out there. And a lot of times there's no escaping it.
And the Edge gave me an opportunity to get clean and sober because I don't have insurance. So it was really hard for me to go into treatment earlier on. The Edge gave me the chance to come here to get sober.
The toughest challenge is the insurance companies. The lack of communication that they give you. The changing up of communication that they don't tell you.
My daughter came up to me and she says, I think I have a problem. And she was hooked on oxycodones. And I seen she had lose weight. I seen the difference in her mood. She dropped out of school, hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I went to get her help, and that's where the trouble began, because I couldn't find any places out there that would help us. I had no insurance at the time. I didn't know what a scholarship was. Every treatment center I went to wanted like $80,000 and told me my daughter would be brand new.
The many, many, many rehab places that he went to were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the insurance covered some of the outpatient ones, but our son, most of the time, had to go to inpatient ones because of all of his other mental issues. And none of it was covered.
A lot of the facilities require insurance, and insurance only pays for 30 days. Well, we know that 30 days of inpatient is subtherapeutic. You need to be inpatient at least 90 days, or as long as you need it.
You can't go to treatment for 30 days and then go back home and sit down on the couch where you used to use, or go into the car where you used to hide your drugs and not automatically think of using, because your brain has now been conditioned. You don't go to treatment for 30 days and expect to be perfectly fine.
Addiction, unfortunately, is a chronic disorder and recovery is an ongoing process. But the treatment piece really should take about 5 to 6 months. In our continuum of care, we try to keep people about 2 to 3 months, and if they follow clinical recommendations, they'll be living in sober living for several months after that. So hopefully somewhere around 8 months to really get a strong head start on their recovery process.
Insurance companies won't cover. They won't cover for a full year of treatment. They won't cover for, the detox time, the res time, the, partial hospitalization time, the intensive outpatient time, and the outpatient time.
And then I had the opportunity to open up my own treatment center. And I always made a promise to God that if I ever had my own treatment center, I would try to scholarship as much as possible. Now, being it's a business, you can only do so much, but we definitely scholarship a lot.
One of the biggest problems with accessing drug treatment in Miami is that there are not that many publicly funded treatment beds. We're talking in the low hundreds. It's somewhere between 100 and 200.
We opened it with the SAMHSA grant in conjunction with Drug Court, with Judge Cohen. She's a great partner. We've worked together very closely, and we were able to get a grant for 3 years to be able to treat patients whether they had insurance or did not have insurance, or if their insurance didn't want to pay for substance, which has been a big problem. So these patients came in, absolutely did not have to pay anything out of pocket.
I do believe that inherently everybody wants the best for society, and everybody wants to do the right thing. We just have very different ways of approaching that. I wish there were more issues like that everybody could come together on in this hyper partisan world that we live in.
Welcome to my reality. The edge of insanity is where I walk the line. Time after
Tina was a beautiful child since she was young. Funny, intelligent. She could talk to you or debate you to death whenever she believed in something. She was very athletic. She was always playing outside, outdoors. She was doing soccer, which she loved to play soccer, riding her bike to school, the elementary school, which was about 5 minutes away. Her grandparents were nearby, her aunt and cousins. Tina was loved.
Tina was 2 years younger than me, and she was my constant. Most of my childhood memories and even many of my first times doing things, my sister was there in my memory.
In 12th grade, she started drinking, but it was at the end of her 12th grade. She, right before you go to college. And I thought, oh, they're experimenting and nothing is gonna happen. So I didn't do anything about it. We talked about it. Listen, you can't drink, this can happen, you can't drive, all of this is illegal. So then she went to university, and that's where it got really bad.
Alcoholism is something that's very real in this country. The American culture embraces alcohol in all celebrations, and kids are exposed to it very young. And I think that in combination with the opioid crisis, actually what we see is that a lot of people who start drinking at a young age are often attracted to opiates because alcohol and opiates trigger the same receptors in the brain.
She wanted to go to Europe, which she did. She went to Milan, spent time there doing fashion. She was good at it. And she kept on drinking. Then she went to New York to live in New York for a while and did very well. She was working also, excellent. Everything was working perfectly except she kept drinking.
My sister was imperfectly perfect. There would be nothing I would change about her. Of course, the addiction was a complete other monster.
She decided to come home and she asked to go into rehab. And right away we jumped on it and yes, we're there for you anytime, yes, let's do it. She went away for a while. When she came back, Tina was ecstatic. She was so happy. She was full of promises. She just felt very empowered. And we couldn't believe it. We thought it was a miracle. 2 months passed by and she started drinking again. Tina went to rehab 3 times, total of 3 times.
No matter how many times she did go to rehab, She always came out strong, but not whole. Still, it lingered. It was present always.
She lost hope. She was very depressed. She felt misunderstood. Nobody would understand her. She withdrew from everybody.
Not only do I feel bad that she was waking up, with this monster on her shoulder, this addiction constantly talking to her, but she also had to play it cool and like she had it together and there's nothing to worry about. All her energy went into making us feel safe and us feel okay and don't worry. And it was a lot on her plate.
I didn't notice anything, nor my family. I asked my family anything different that I was to look out, look for signs, and I can't tell you.
If you knew my sister, all of the characteristics of an addict were not present until very late. I think once she had that first drink, the monster was already there. I just think it took her over 10 years to really let the rest of us see how much of a hold the addiction had on her.
Tina passed away. It was on a Saturday, early afternoon. I was at the Museum of Science with my 2 granddaughters. I was with my husband. And they had, that was the call you never want to get. I always thought a call would come in the evening or early morning. This was in the middle of the day. The boyfriend called and the policeman that she had passed away.
She fought hard. I know she fought for herself, but I think my sister fought more for her family. She didn't want to let us down. She wanted to beat it. And it breaks my heart that, she didn't make it.
It was too strong. Some people can sometimes, a lot of them make it. They're very tough. They're very disciplined. With her, it was too tough.
Welcome to my reality. The edge of insanity is where I walk the line, time after time. If there's someone there looking down above, could you send me a little love? And do you know my name?
We didn't want another family to go through this again. About 2 years after my sister's death, my mom started a foundation under her name.
Our foundation has 2 programs. One of them is the ambassadorship program, which goes to every high school. Right now we're in 3 private high schools, and we bring in to the students from 9th to 12th grade, we bring them assemblies, professionals like policemen, psychiatrists, psychologists.
My mission with this foundation is to save a life. And I mean that by starting with the youth. Addiction can start young, and we have a program called the Tina's Ambassadors, and we arm students with the knowledge of addiction, how to combat addiction, overdose, how to shatter the stigma, and how to deal with the difficult choices that they may face.
Hi, my name is Kyle Bramson. I'm part of the Tina Daly Foundation as a Tina's Ambassador.
I'm Cindy Vega, and I'm a freshman and going into my sophomore year, and I'm a Tina Daly Ambassador.
My name is Roberto Lugones, and my goal is to spread medical awareness through how there's always going to be a positive in the negative. that you're not alone in this and that there are many people that will be able to help you. Communicating and really being open with friends and family about drug abuse and alcohol.
And one message that I really want to advocate is shattering the stigma and helping people understand that it's okay to talk about addiction and alcohol.
I've had the opportunity to work with the Tina Daly Foundation and Vilma Daly. And in that program, we've been able to go into different school systems and speak to the young people. We help talk to them about how do I make a good decision? How do I know if this is something that I want to get involved in? And what we talk a lot about is how do I start to take charge of my life? Because as adolescents, for many of them in 1 to 2 years, maybe even less, 6 months, they're going to be going to college, and many of them are going to be going to college away from their families.
It does not discriminate, and I think that's important, especially for the youth today, realizing that it could be me, it could be my friend, it could be my parents, it could be my cousin. It doesn't matter where we come from.
It hurts everybody, no matter where you are, where you're from, how old you are. It can affect you no matter what.
It's also like people have to understand that like smoking and drinking and doing all that, it doesn't make you cool. Like you think it makes you cool, but like honestly, like going to a party and getting like drunk and getting high, you have to also understand obviously the risk. And you know, it's just like it doesn't make you cool because you're making yourself look like stupid and embarrassing, and you're embarrassing yourself.
It's all just decision making. What they want to do with the information that they're provided, because that's all we really can do is lay it out on the table, for whether it's the parents or the kids, and they know the information, and it's their decision, to get their, adult on, if you will, or to decide what they're going to do with the information.
There's help, there's hope, and we need to reach out and help each other get to the point where we can finally see these overdoses drop from our community, where we can see lives restored to healthy human beings, where we can see families flourishing again because they saved their loved one, and not just their body, their physicality, but also their emotional and mental health. Their state of how they feel about themselves is so critical to this recovery process.
You never think it could happen to you, but it can. Good and bad happen to people every day. Some things hopefully can be prevented. Having information, I think, helps us be able to fight back and regain our kids, understand what they're going through and what they may resort to.
This is something that you always have to think that this could happen to you.
People think that you're not good enough parents. People think that this is something that he chose to do.
We're in touch with a lot of people. We've turned a lot of lives around. But, the stigma attached to recovery, if you will, is like you're degenerates, you're the lowest of the low. You really look down upon. Like if someone wasn't in a recovery and doing a 12-step program, and you had mentioned to them you were addicted to drugs or alcohol, they would look down at you with the lowest life of former life. That's how they look at you.
This can happen and has happened to anybody. It can happen to anyone that's listening to this. It could happen to your neighbors. It could happen to your employees. It could happen to your friends, your children, your brothers, your sisters.
We grew up middle class. We were, both in good schools. We played sports, and then, it started with alcohol with both of us. And then it just took us to places that our family has never seen.
What I have seen and the families, the homes, the living rooms that I have sat down with parents and with their children who are suffering from addiction could be my living room. No one is immune to it. No one, not even myself, who's exposed and educated my kids as much as I could.
Just because you come from a good upbringing, good families, good standing in the community, good schools, there's no guarantee that nothing like what happened to us is avoidable.
This is an epidemic, and it's an illness. These kids did not choose to have this illness. This is something that all young people try. But when you have the propensity, you try it and you just cannot get off it.
People need to open up their eyes and their ears and realize that this is a problem that is much bigger than what we have in place as the solution.
We see so many families that are destroyed, mothers that lose their children so quickly because they can't get a grip of it because we didn't know. And a lot of it now we do know.
There is hope and that there is help. And even if you feel like there's nobody who understands you, or everyone that you've counted on and your loved ones are angry with you and they don't understand, that's what we are here for. That's what clinicians are here for, psychiatrists, therapists. We are here to support you and know that we'll be standing right next to you, side by side, to walk you through this process.
This is a disease. It's like any other illness. We can fix it. We must fix it. And if we keep a mind towards that success, we will be successful.
Treatment creates hope, and people can get into really good recovery and reclaim their lives and raise their children and reconnect with their families and live productive lives.
And even though you may not understand it, and I can't say I always do, how do we find people help? And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's really hard. But I would also challenge you to be there and never give up on somebody, because there's got to be a way.
And maybe it's not the 30th time that they've been to rehab, but maybe it's that 31st time that things get better for them. And so I always look at it that way. It's not, okay, well, you relapsed again and again and again, and I can't, no, it's, well, but maybe it's this time.
Alcohol and drug abuse can be overcome. It's not curable. You have this for the rest of your life, but it can be contained.
If you're diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic, that disease left untreated equals death. It's a fatal disease. That's the facts. If I could have did it on my own, I would not be sitting here sharing with you how I did it. But the reality is I suffer from a disease that's called alcoholism, not alcoholism. I can't stay sober on yesterday's sobriety. It has a shelf life of 24 hours. So I wake up each day and I do a few simple things along the day to maintain my sobriety. What I learned is the disease of addiction is not a death sentence. Your history does not have to dictate your future, and as long as you're breathing, it's never too late.